There were two of them. It'd be easy to do that. And then go to.
Good evening, everybody. We're gonna get started.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Keep telling everybody the rumblings are that we're gonna keep doing this. As many candidates as we can get to come, even for the other offices, that's what we're gonna keep doing. So if you have somebody that you know or can ask, please get with us so that we can coordinate that and get as many candidates here as we can. It gives them an opportunity to share why they're running and what their purpose and intent is in serving in that way, and also for you to really get to know them better so you can be more responsible as a citizen and in your voting. So tonight, Brandon Masters is here running for sheriff, which we all pretty much already know, but just to cover that, in case you were confused. That's why you're here. But anyhow, so he's gonna talk with us tonight. We're gonna do it just like we did last week. Even though this feels a little formal, just pretend you're at my house and there's coffee and snacks. Feel free to get up and get that throughout the evening. You don't need to worry about that. Bathrooms are just down the hall on your left. And we'll go, Brandon's gonna introduce himself and share some things about himself. Then we'll open it up for question and answer, and then at the end we'll just mingle and converse, and you can ask things more specifically if you want. So be really relaxed. Okay? So I'm gonna pray. We'll get started, and I'll do that. Father, thank you for the freedom that we have so that we have these opportunities to know candidates and to vote. I ask that we would all be seeking you for wisdom and discernment in how we vote. And as we go through this evening, help us to ask the questions and equip Brandon with the answers that he has, and to be able to articulate them. And may we all do all of this for your glory and for your honor. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thanks, Brandon. Here you go.
Well, good evening. Thank you guys for this opportunity. I really appreciate it. My name is Brandon Masters. I grew up here in Sheridan County. I was born at the Sheridan Hospital, graduated from Tongue River High School in 2002. I grew up on our ancestral ranch between Dayton and Ranchester, the Masters Ranch. I was the 5th generation Masters to have an opportunity to grow up in Sheridan County on that ranch. Family got bigger and the ranch got smaller, so I actually decided to go to make a living elsewhere, and I chose law enforcement. In 2006, I graduated from Sheridan High School with an Associate's in Criminal Justice degree. I started my law enforcement career here in Sheridan at the Sheriff's Office as a detention officer in 2007. 2009, I moved to Worland as a police officer, and I worked in Worland from 2009 to 2016. And with Worland being such a small community, I had the opportunity to gain a lot of different experiences there. For lack of a better term, we were kind of the Swiss Army knife of law enforcement over in Worland. So I was able to work on a drug interdiction task force in conjunction with DCI over there. I was also part of a TAC team, or a SWAT team, which was a regional TAC and SWAT team. And other members were Hot Springs County, Bighorn County, Thermopolis, Lovell, Grable, Washakie County, and then Worland. For the TAC team, I was operator, so an entry operator, as well as on the sniper element. Other duties and experience that I received over in Worland, I worked my way up to the investigator spot, and I was there for about a year, and then I was promoted to sergeant, to a sergeant position, where I was a supervisor for about 4 years before I decided it was time for me to move home. So in 2016, I had the hankering to move home, and I just missed my family, missed the area. I'm through and through Sheridan County, so it was time for me to move home. And opportunity came up, and I applied for the position here at the Sheriff's Office, and I moved home and have been a deputy on the Sheriff's Office ever since. In all of that, I was able to get an online degree of alternative and sustainable energy management, and I graduated in 2017 with that bachelor's degree, and I'm currently working on a master's program in public administration. In 2019, I joined the United States Army, well, the Wyoming Army National Guard, and I completed basic training in 2020, along with my AIT advanced training. So that's that's my experience, and those are my qualifications. My view of law enforcement here in Sheridan County, I want to continue our collaboration with the community, but I want to increase it. I want to continue to have our outreach programs like Donuts with the Deputy, but have them monthly, and try not to shut down with any incidents that might come up like COVID. If there are things that come out where we would have to distance ourselves, I try and utilize some technology platforms like Zoom, Windows Office meetings, stuff like that, just so we can continue to have open communications with our citizens. Currently, we have a phenomenal relationship with all of the leadership facets of each community, so like the mayors, the council members, the commissions, and which is phenomenal. But I want to increase that. I want to continue that, but I want to increase our individual communication with each citizen. So to do that, I also would like to utilize some education programs, such as, well, not programs, but additional education with links through the Sheridan County Sheriff's Office webpage that are like frequently asked questions, frequently responded to calls, and incidents that are going on in our communities that help the citizens and understand what our role is and what their role is. I truly believe in citizens' personal freedoms and limited impact or intervention or impact with the government in their lives. And I want to help the Sheriff's Office educate our citizens, especially the new ones that are coming from different areas that might rely a little bit more on government in their lives. So I want to retain our Wyoming values, keep government out of your lives, out of our life, out of everybody's lives, and that's what I'm running for. I'll open it up.
And I'll ask this question just based on the statement you said about trying to keep government a bit out of our lives and maintain that Wyoming feel, right?
Correct.
And you had mentioned donuts with the sheriff, which is awesome. I'll have a donut with you, that's good. So, but I like donuts. I was a fireman and we still like donuts, but don't tell them. But so my question is, just in that, if a greater entity limits your ability as the sheriff or the government organization to say, hey, we are now setting some rules in place where you are not allowed to go have donut with Chad.
Okay.
Right? Because we have some entities, some global entity rule coming to Sheridan.
Let's be very clear.
How would you?
You're talking about, like, we just went through that, right, with COVID, right?
Right. So I don't want to have a Zoom meeting and have a donut with you. I want you to come sit with me face to face and sit with my kids, because I think that human interaction is so powerful.
Right. I totally understand that. So we still have to balance the two things: the personal responsibility, the ability for you to act for yourself, and for you to decide what's right for you, for me to decide what's right for me. We still have to balance that with, there might be a potential public health issue, right? So at first, we might have to have some restrictions for a minute, just to make sure that this isn't a real thing. But as soon as it's clear and obvious that, okay, it's not as impactful as we initially thought, everybody can continue to move forward as responsible adults, responsible citizens, right? So we have to find that balance. that, okay, yeah, we have a public health issue that could be coming down. Everybody that's voted into offices are voted there to try and act in the best interest in those situations, right? So I'll try and exercise my best judgment to make sure that everybody's safe and keep my thumb on the pulse of what's going on. And as soon as it's clear that there's no public health issue, public health threat, we can continue on it as normal. And we'll move back to normal as soon as possible.
How are you gonna determine that? Because it's my understanding, the doctor that's in charge is not an elected person.
Okay, right?
And we all know that the doctors, the hospital, they all got money
Right.
for COVID people. And if they would have truly been following the science, but you have to go outside of Fauci,
Right.
how are you gonna do that? When your
You know what,
whole
that is very-
constituents are telling you, I don't wanna wear the
I
mask.
think you just answered my question. Like, if my constituents are saying, we're deciding not to do this, I think I have to follow what you guys want, right? If you're voting me into office for that, I have to follow the voice of the people that are voting me in. So if it's, like I said, I believe in people's ability to make those decisions. Everybody in this room are clearly intelligent. You can decide what's right for you. You can decide what's right for your family, the next person. So if you decide that you don't wanna wear a mask, don't wear a mask. But if somebody else decides that they need to wear a mask, we can't make them take that mask off. And the
but-
reverse is the same. If they decide not to wear the mask, we can't make them put the mask off.
Right, but so Walmart says I can't come in, or, you know, we
Yeah.
can't go to church, we can't do this, we
Right.
can't do that.
Right?
What
So
are
they-
you gonna do when I say I wanna go to church, and we all wanna go to church?
So so the difference between church and Walmart is, Walmart can refuse service to any customer, correct? Right?
Right there.
So no matter, whether it's a mask, whether you have a shirt on or no shoes, they have that right to refuse service to, their customers. Church, I think you'd have to follow your elder, like it's the church's leadership's choice, not the state's choice. Separation of state and church, right? So it's your church's elders' responsibility to decide if they're gonna let you come or not.
So the question would be, if the governor says, this is a mandate, you shut everything down, and we go, yeah, I'm gonna go to we're not doing this again. You know, we didn't know before, now we know, and for me, as a citizen of the United States of America, I'm not very trusting of government, or their medical, or the CDC. I don't really trust what's coming down. I think it's so if they go, oh, the monkeypox is not a big thing, we're gonna shut down, I'm like, no. But if our governor or if our public health person in this county says, you have to do this, and we say no, where do you stand on their appointed, you know?
Right.
The governor is voted in,
Where
and
I-
so if we're going to choose to get together as an assembly, whether it's a church or a school group or whatever,
Right.
and they're saying this is a mandate, you can't do that, is a mandate a law, A? And B, does it follow the Constitution of the United States and or of this state?
Okay, so there's two different parts of that. A mandate mostly is going to be a civil law, which law enforcement doesn't have. We deal with criminal law, right? Unless the state writes in to Wyoming state statute that law enforcement shall do this or take action on this, there's a criminal element to it, we're not going to enforce a mandate. That's all civil. So you'll be subject to potential penalty, civil penalties or charges, fees. But we're not going to come arrest you or take lawful action as a sheriff's office. But to get back to your question, or get back to what am I gonna do if an appointed person versus a elected person makes a mandate? We need to view each incident with the totality of the circumstances and make the best judgment, do the right thing for the right reasons at the right time. I can't tell you that, like, I could give you an answer right now, but just a blanket answer. But that same circumstance might come up, there might be one element that changes that drastically would alter a decision that we'd have to make, right? So again, I believe that those people that are involved, that want to meet for Bible study, that wanna meet for, any of those congregations, they have that right to do that. You can make a decision for yourself. If somebody wants to show up with a mask on, it's up to you. That's their right. If they don't wanna show up with a mask on, and the rest of the group decides, okay, well, we're not gonna meet because of suspect.
So if it's not a church, if it's a business, cause Walmart got to say all about Home Depot, you know, and these are the hot topics because of what we've been through.
Yeah, gotcha.
So if I, as a hairdresser,
Right.
wanna open my business, and they're saying, you know, you can't, you have to shut down your business, or I'm a car repairer,
Yeah, so that's
whatever
the
it is.
Department of Health that regulates that, right?
Yeah, where do you stand when they call the cops and say, if the police are knocking at my door gonna arrest me, and I call the sheriff and go, you're to protect my constitutional rights, what are you gonna come, are you gonna come talk to them for me, or?
Right. So that's a really convoluted question, right?
It is, but it is the issue at hand.
It is an issue at hand, right? So when you live in different jurisdictions, you choose to live there, and you choose to abide by the rules and laws that are in that jurisdiction. So, point in case, the city of Sheridan has different ordinances that aren't in effect out in the county, right? But you still abide by those laws and those ordinances because you live in the city of Sheridan. The state, or the county residents have their own state statutes that they live and abide by. So if it comes down to, my point is, when there's, the only way that we'll take action is if the citizens of Wyoming decide that it is prudent to put this into law, saying the sheriff will, or law enforcement will take action on this. Then that, in my opinion, means that the majority of the citizens of Wyoming are in agreement that this needs to be handled and needs to be illegal.
So let me ask you this.
So,
I think maybe the question can go a different way, and I guess we'll see how you respond this way. Do you believe, as sheriff, that you have the ultimate authority over all law within the county
I do,
and every city within it?
I do.
But doesn't that just directly contradict what you just said?
It does not, because I only enforce state statute. So state statute is a lot looser than city ordinance. So we don't enforce city ordinance.
So going back to this lady's question, if Sheridan Police are at her place of business,
Right,
to close her down,
right,
or arrest her if she doesn't close down,
right,
she says, look, I'm gonna call the sheriff,
right.
right? Sheriff comes out.
Yep.
So are you going to then tell the Sheridan Police they have to back off?
So again, I'll have to take it in the totality of the circumstances, but because you live in the city of Sheridan, they can enact more stringent laws. So like the state of Wyoming, we have more stringent laws than the actual Constitution of the United States, right? So every level that you go into in society, you get a little bit more strict. So the state of Wyoming has less strict laws than the municipalities, say Dayton's ordinances or Sheridan's ordinances. So if you live in Sheridan, you have the opportunity to move out to the county and not run into that. But if you choose to stay in the city of Sheridan, you're choosing to live under those laws.
So are you saying your jurisdiction stops at city lines?
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that what I am authorized to enforce is throughout the state, but it's less stringent than what's authorized in that what you agree to abide by living in the city of Sheridan.
I think we're kind of missing what she was trying to get at. We're not talking about the ordinances or the laws that are in place.
Right.
If the state health comes down and tells you that we're putting another mandate down, we're gonna shut down businesses.
Okay.
Let's say it's in Dayton, cause that is in Sheridan City.
Very good.
What are you gonna do?
So,
Are you just gonna do it, or are you gonna try and find out what they're, why and what's behind it?
well, ultimately, the Department of Health goes down and shuts down businesses often without law enforcement's involvement, correct? So, getting us involved right now to try and push back, I think would be a misuse of our authority, and I don't think we have the authority to do that. By living in the state of Wyoming and operating a business in the state of Wyoming, you agree to conduct your business by the state laws and the state regulations, whether it's civil or criminal. And therefore, that takes that out of my hand. It's not a criminal matter. That's what my wheelhouse is criminal law, not civil law. So the business aspect, that is all civil. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm gonna go a different vein.
Okay.
Do you have any kind of belief in a faith, of any kind of faith?
I'm Christian,
or
yes,
not?
ma'am.
Okay.
I'm Christian, yes.
Can you tell me, when you say that I'm a Christian, can you define that for
Yes.
me?
I believe that Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior, and through my belief in Him, that I will, believing that He is my Lord and Savior, I will have ever eternal life in the kingdom of heaven. You're very welcome.
Have you read the Wyoming Constitution? And if so, when?
So I have read the Wyoming Constitution. It was back in 2009, or 2008, my apologies. And it's been a while since I've.
Do you know how that would affect your job as sheriff?
The Wyoming Constitution?
Knowing it
Yes,
or
yes.
not knowing it?
Yes, yes. Yes, so, the Wyoming Constitution gives along with the US Constitution, or the Constitution of the United States, gives, the sheriff of each jurisdiction ultimate law enforcement authority.
What would you do different from how things are currently being ran through the Sheridan County Sheriff's Department now?
Okay, so I would institute a training program. So we have phenomenal employees at the sheriff's office. So I want to increase our training with the fellas, make each individual a subject matter expert in a different discipline, preferably a discipline that they prefer. And once they're subject matter expert, have them deliver that training to every employee at the sheriff's office. So it'll increase our knowledge base, our professionalism, and with an increased professionalism, we'll be able to serve the citizens better.
Okay. And I guess this kind of works with my next question is, would you change anything on how the sheriff's office investigates? And if so, how and what?
I wouldn't change anything on, well, let me back that up. I think I would take a more proactive approach in the way we do our day-to-day operations, but the investigations in and of themselves, our deputies they're kind of a cordial, they do their job, they're great employees. They care about the community, they care about making a positive impact here in Sheridan County, and I want to continue that.
Thank you.
Okay, if I could go back to that previous question for a moment. I understand that municipals have more stringent laws. I've actually made this argument myself many times about why a person should or should not be living within city limits or within the county. I think that the more important question that we're wondering about here is, what if those more stringent laws become unconstitutional? Who's going to be standing up for us, and do you see yourself in that role?
I do. So, I do, but there's a long explanation to this, okay? So when there becomes something that's unconstitutional, yes, we need to stand up for it and fight back against it, right? And by fighting, I don't mean the actual physical, go hands-on, get our pitchforks and torches and march down to Cheyenne. That's not what I mean. What I mean is we take our civil actions that were granted. We use the power to vote, we take out those folks that are enacting the laws that are unconstitutional, and we correct the course of action. Okay, and then we also, so that's long term, right? So the first course of action is get a hold of representatives, force them or pressure them, can't force them to do anything, pressure them to change the laws, to reverse whatever that came down that is against the Constitution. So everything, we need to do this civilly, but it still needs to be, we need to show a unified body, showing that all citizens of Wyoming agree with this, not just this faction or this faction. We need to show a unified body stating that we're tired of this oppression, oppression for lack of a better term, right? So we're tired of this. We want you, because you're elected to do this, we want you to move forward, change that law, change that directive. If that doesn't work, then yeah, you vote them out. Liz Cheney is going to lose her seat because she made the wrong choice, right?
Right, but that's, I'm gonna try to be nice because I'm getting aggravated.
I got you. Fire away.
Okay, so I get, we can go this and we can vote them out, we can do, we can take the long way around the barn. But when you come knocking on my door and you want my guns that I have every right to legally own, and just because some person decided, oh no, you can't have that. Are you gonna come get it, or are you gonna say, no, that is unconstitutional, we need to do a little bit more digging?
Right, so I'm gonna say absolutely no, that is unconstitutional. And we're also supported by state statute right now. State statute gives law enforcement the ability to stop people from going door to door and taking their weapons.
Okay, so you're gonna do that.
That's a criminal.
And Biden says, gives it his blessing, and he says you're gonna take them anyway, so he sends the feds, and they're gonna come,
Right.
and
So-
I'm gonna call you
Yep.
and say, come get them off my door. And if they get to my door, they've broken into 2 locks to get to my front door. So, but what I wanna know, because if we go the long way around the barn and they come in and they already take them,
We don't have to go the long way around the barn right now because there is current state statute that gives law enforcement, sheriffs, the ability to stop anybody trying to take our weapons, trying to take our.
but I live in Sheridan.
It's okay, it's state statute,
Well, I get that, but I live in the city,
right? Yeah.
so if it's Democratic run,
It does, so state statute, yeah, so states, okay, that's really good.
I'm gonna call you
Right,
and say, get them off my door.
so that's the point. You're exactly right. State statute, even if it's democratically run, anybody who tries to do that would be in violation of that law, and we'd be able to stop them.
So being state, now you have a governor, let's say Biden exercises, his red flag laws.
Okay.
The governor says, I'm gonna do the same thing, I'm gonna go ahead and side with Biden.
Right?
Now let's get to the
So he'd be,
potatoes.
he would be in direct violation of Wyoming state statute.
Absolutely,
We would say impeach him, we're not gonna follow your directive.
but that's, again, the long way around, what do we do in the interim?
So if he's in violation of that, he would be arrested, right? Which means we would stop, there'd be an illegal order. We wouldn't follow that, unconstitutional, illegal, what have you, we wouldn't follow it. We'd follow what's on the state books right now, state statute, and at that time, and enforce it.
So I have a question. That law just passed in the last session,
That's correct.
and the opinion of some is it is pretty weak. It does something, it is there, and it gives us something.
Right.
But there is some opinion on the strength of it.
Okay.
Let's say, and you pick any scenario, what if that hadn't passed? And let's go back to what she asked.
Okay.
If the feds come, what if that state statute that just passed had not passed?
Okay, so if the feds come, the sheriff is still the supreme law enforcement agent in the county. They have to have permission to come into the county to come in. We keep them out as best as we can.
Even without a state statute?
Even without a state statute.
Okay, so how will you decide then whether it's, coming for guns or weapons, or coming to shut down
Churches.
churches, or shut down,
So,
even commerce, like semi trucks
Right.
driving in and out because they don't have a vaccine. There aren't state statutes for all of those things. So at what point do you get to take action just strictly based on constitutional grounds?
Right, so we uphold the Constitution, but more specifically, we are held not to violate your constitutional rights, right? So we would have to find a way that, being in law enforcement, that we're not, when we're exercising any authority, any use of force, we're not gonna violate somebody else's constitutional rights either, right? So as long as we're in line with those constitutions, with their rights, we'll take action moving forward. So I can't. Sir.
Brandon, why do you wanna be my sheriff?
Well, I wanna be your sheriff because I grew up here in Sheridan County. My son is gonna grow up here in Sheridan County, and I want to provide the most excellent law enforcement that I can for him, for my grandkids, for everybody in this city, or not the city, the county, my apologies, the county. That's my biggest thing. I want, what I see is a working relationship with the sheriff's office and the citizens. We wanna work hand in hand. I want us to work hand in hand. I wanna be a little bit more proactive. I want our deputies stopping and making contacts with people out on the street, out on the roads, building one-on-one relationships so we can foster a strong relationship.
Do you think is it so, how do I ask this?
Speak blunt.
No, I'm trying to put the words together correctly. So, you and I personally have had an interaction, so I'll say that, right?
Right.
Okay. And it was exactly what you just said, right?
Right.
And it was.
Right.
I mean, and that's cool, that's good, because that's what it should be, right? And I believe in that.
Right.
So, obviously, that's happening now.
Correct.
So, I'm giving you your chance to shine, I'm trying to give you a chance to shine here. So, with that, because I believe that, and I believe that's what had happened. So, if you become the leader of it, how does that improve? Or what's lacking in the leadership that, I'm trying to
No, I think I know.
throw something at me.
Right, I got it.
Not a bullet.
Yeah, I know, right?
Just kidding.
So honestly, there's nothing lacking in the leadership. There's just simply a different philosophical difference in what I want to do and what I think the lieutenant wants to do. So, like I said, I want citizens to make decisions on their own without relying on law enforcement, without us having to come and make civil decisions for you. Okay, so for lack of a better explanation, I'm gonna use a property line dispute. Somebody has a fence that might be 3 feet one way or another, right? So typically we get a call for that. And that is obviously not a law enforcement call because it's not a crime. It is a civil issue. But some of our deputies are going to be unnecessarily in your life and then in your neighbor's life, trying to figure out if there is a crime here, if the fence is in the right spot, which we're not surveyors, that's not our job, but we will try and help you get to the right tool to make that decision without using us. I lost my train of thought for one moment. So what I want to do is I want to continue the collaboration with the sheriff's office and the citizens. So with our deputies out in the areas patrolling around, I want our deputies out a little bit more often and not just driving around, right? So if they're driving around, that's great because presence in and of itself is the #1 deterrence of crime in a community. But our deputies, I want them to build relationships with the citizens in each community. So drive around, get out, introduce yourself, see what's going on. If you have any concerns, any complaints, what can I help you with? Or just say howdy. Maybe shoot a couple hoops with kids out on the street or throw a ball back and forth. Just build that trust with one another. That actual neighborhood feeling, that neighbor feeling that Wyoming used to have. It still has slightly, but we can strengthen that and build it better, and build it back.
May I ask a follow-up?
Sir?
So with that, one of the things I believe in is I believe in community. I believe in knowing your neighbors. I believe in that concept. I have lived other places and I've watched populations grow at rapid paces,
Right.
which, if you look around, it's happening here. When a certain percentage of your community comes from outside your community, which I did, I came from outside this community, I immediately dug myself into it to be part of it. But as the masses come, you lose a sense of community. Because if 50% of your populace is not from here, they have no community here.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what concerns would the sheriff have to foresee with that?
Right.
With that?
Right, so there's different cultures that would be coming in, right? Different expectations, different understandings of what's right and wrong, right? Different morals, different ethics. So we would need to adhere to our Wyoming values, the culture in the area. So our ethics, our morals. And with our public outreach programs with the sheriff's office, get those people involved. And if they don't show up themselves, then with our deputies out in the area, they'd be stopping in saying, howdy, I'm Deputy Masters. Welcome to the area, this is what we believe in. And just, it's not going to be an immediate fix. No matter what, it's going to be a long, hard, I'm gonna call it a fight, but it's not a fight really, but process. And the people that are here care about our communities. We're not gonna change. And I think that's why people move here to Wyoming, is because we're tough. And people move here because they know we're good people. So if they move here because they know we're good people and they may have slightly different ethics and morals, they're going to start assimilating with the populace, as long as we continue to stay strong and stay resolute in our beliefs and our ethics.
You mentioned getting a master's degree in administration. Is that criminal justice administration, or is it gonna be?
There is a criminal justice emphasis
Okay.
on it, yes, sir.
What's your plan beyond being sheriff? I mean, is it to become a city administrator, et
Maybe,
cetera?
I don't have any aspirations past sheriff,
Okay.
honestly.
Would you speak to the relationship the sheriff department has with the police department?
Yeah, it's getting better, recently, especially recently with Travis moving into the chief's position. But historically, we've had a pretty contentious relationship. And, excuse me, that's another piece of experience that I can bring from Moreland. They work hand in hand together with the sheriff's office over in Moreland. And I'd like to bring that relationship here. When I was in detention, and when I first started on the road, Travis and I got along great. And I guarantee that we'd have a really phenomenal relationship, even as sheriff. We have to understand each other's, like, I'll stay in my lane, he has to stay in his lane, but we'd still have to work hand in hand.
But oftentimes, don't those lanes cross over?
There is a little bit of overlap, that is correct. Yep. So effective communication and teamwork would help moving forward with that. Yes, ma'am.
What about with the highway patrol also?
Highway Patrol, yep, same. We have a phenomenal relationship with Highway Patrol. Continue to work with Lieutenant Jorgensen and all the guys. Sir,
Okay, so you're currently a sheriff's deputy, correct?
that's correct.
In the last 2 years, I feel that it's pretty safe to say that a lot of our constitutional rights have been trampled upon by the federal government and through many different avenues, including local officials. So what I'd like to know is, within your ability in your current position, what did you do or didn't you do to stand up for our constitutional rights during that time?
But what I can say is we had some pretty phenomenal guidance from our leader, from Thompson. Just like what I was saying, he initially acted in the best interest of the citizens. We took a hands-off stance, let people decide what's best for them. We didn't go to businesses and try to remove people or enforce mandates like There might have been one instance in the city, but from the city police, but the sheriff's office, we took a hands-off approach and upheld the Constitution.
What would have happened if you were sheriff at that time, at that business in the city?
Okay.
And the chief and the officer that did go in?
Right.
What if that business owner had called you and said, this is in violation of my constitutional rights. It's also in violation of a lot of HIPAA regulations that they were required to uphold as employers.
Okay.
Those are law things.
Right.
Yes, civil laws, but still,
Right.
with you being the supreme law enforcement in the county at that time, and this is, I know, hypothetical, so it's
Yeah, right.
easy to say what if or what would you, but could you speak to what that might look like
So,
if they called you, and I know there's a PDSO
Right.
thing, and then, but you
So-
still have just how would that go?
so unfortunately, that would have already happened, right? So I'd be reacting to something that already happened. And there wouldn't be a whole lot that I could do. It
But
would
if
already,
they called you while they were still in there,
while they were still in there.
yeah,
So we'd respond, we'd try and use communication, trying to figure out what's the best decision for everybody involved.
so you would kind of mediate between the PD and the
Right.
business owner.
Correct.
So just to be clear, what you're saying is that, under Thompson's leadership, by taking a hands-off role, what you're saying is that you helped protect individuals' rights by not going along with the mandates, or not going along with the,
We weren't enforcing mandates in the county. That's not our job, sir.
okay, but what I'm trying to figure out though is there some part of the sheriff's job to stand in between the citizens and those who would try to take away their freedoms, take away their, basically do unconstitutional things to them?
Okay, great, I understand that. Yes, that would be the sheriff's job. Well, that would be one of his responsibilities as a responsible sheriff, to stand up for and protect the constitutional rights of the citizens, right? And I understand that you believe that those constitutional rights were infringed on by the federal government.
And some local people too,
And some
but
local
yes.
people, right?
And we've got it on every level. We've got it from Ian Hunter. We've got it spread through the school district. I mean, people have been shut out, locked out, and basically told to shut up on many different levels. And frankly, it was a tragedy
Right.
from a constitutional perspective. And I think what a lot of us are looking for is what kind of who was supposed to step in and help protect us from all these measures coming down. And I think a lot of us are learning that falls under the role and description of the sheriff. So perhaps this would be a good time to ask you, what is the role of a sheriff?
So the role of the sheriff, by state statute, is to run the jail. We do civil service, we do VINs, and provide for the safety and security of the citizens of the county. So we are the supreme law enforcement officers in the county. When it comes to the violations, those civil violations of Constitution, that there are remedies, but they're long remedies that we've addressed earlier, that you have to take the civil action, either a lawsuit, or vote your leadership out of office.
So there's no quick way to avoid that, what was happening?
Unless there's violence, there's no
Yeah,
quick
which-
way,
Yeah, there wasn't, that I know.
right?
Two questions.
Ma'am?
Say in the county, pick a school, Claremont,
Okay.
Tongue River, Bighorn. say a student, just like happened down south, went to
Right.
school,
Right?
refused to wear a mask, was arrested.
Okay.
In the only reason I asked that scenario is we've been kind of dealing with the PDSO deal, and that would be a purely sheriff's office situation.
right.
So if the school calls and says, we need you to come arrest the student,
We would not be arresting anybody for wearing or not wearing a mask when it was mandated. Yes, we'd ask them to leave. But if the school asks them to leave and they don't, that becomes a trespassing issue, which is a violation of crime, but I think it'd be inappropriate to use that just to remove the student or, enforce the school's wishes at that point. We would ask them, we wouldn't charge them, but we would ask them to leave.
what if they refused? Does that
We would-
become a,
Yeah, so that
Criminal.
does increase it, right? So
Right.
it's already a criminal issue with them refusing to leave,
Okay.
trespassing. If they are willing, once we get there, to walk off on their own, then yeah, it wouldn't be a whole law enforcement issue, but if we show up and they decide not to be civil, then it kind of ties our hands, we have to take some sort of action. And if we have to put hands on somebody, that's a use of force.
Wouldn't you be violating the Wyoming Constitution, against that child who you're now talking about arresting, when the statute says that they have a right to a free and fair education? And it's the school, shouldn't they just be educated
They should be
themselves
educated.
instead of your direction and your focus being on the child? Shouldn't it be on the school themselves or the school district themselves?
Right, so there's no absolutes, right? So what you're asking is an absolute question. We have to take into account the disruption from that one child to everybody else's, or all the other children's education in that school, right? So if we leave that child there, we potentially could be disrupting 30 students' education process instead of just one. So we have to try and make a judgment call and do the right thing for the majority of the case there.
So you'll violate one child's rights for the greater good.
Yeah,
I'm
so
not
they don't
saying-
wear a mask, big deal.
I just
The
want to
other
make sure that
29
that's-
kids got
That's not
one.
what I said. I'm not violating his right if the school intendant's asking him to leave. They have that right to ask a child to leave for a day. Truancy wouldn't take effect unless the child's missed several days.
But I think we're kind of skating over something here.
Okay.
Um,
Be blunt, please.
Well, if a child has to ask permission to breathe fresh air,
Mhm.
that's wrong.
Okay.
If a child chooses not to wear a mask to breathe that fresh air, it's in that child's rights to make that decision, right? If the only complaint that the child, according to the school, is having with that child, that particular child, is that they're not adhering to the mask mandate,
Right.
where is that a disruption in that school?
You know, that's a valid concern, except that if one child decides not to adhere to it, then the next one, then the next one, then the next one. Yeah, that's a
Slippery slope.
Man, let me process that for a moment, if you would.
Let me ask you a different
Because it's a
question.
mandate that was never legal in the first place, so what
Correct.
gives them the
Well,
right to
it's
kick
a-
out a student for following something that wasn't legal in the first place?
Right, so
Violates
when you,
constitutions.
so let's move back to the civil process real quick. So when you live in a state, you agree to live to certain rules and regulations that come down, whether it's civil or criminal. So the mandates are civil, and because you live here, you still agree to follow by those rules. Now, when those rules aren't in accordance to you, or you don't agree with them, you do have the course to correct those. Initially saying, no, I'm not going to follow them is not the right course of action. Going through your state representative, going through the governor, saying, please change this, we don't agree with you, we don't agree with this, we want this changed, and when he doesn't do that, that's when you, again, it's a long process because it's civil, you have to either bring up a lawsuit or try and impeach him.
But a mandate isn't technically a legal law though, so, but under civil, it can be whatever it wants.
So, I'm not 100% versed on civil law, but I can tell you that it's not criminal law, so there's not a whole lot that I
That
can't
you
go
can
and
do.
arrest somebody about. for it.
So you guys could
I can
do a
help.
thing about what
What we would
happened
do
in
is
this.
we'd try and help organize everybody to do the right, to move forward as one body, one unified front to affect change. And the change is gonna be slow, and it's civil. You can't just, it's not a, otherwise otherwise you wouldn't be in a civilized society. Yes, ma'am.
When was the last time you read the US Constitution?
Last week.
Good answer.
What is there, what is something that you remember from that? What is something that stood out to you the most in reading it?
Oh, man. So the civil process on how to affect change in the government is what stood out to me. So I guess that's probably why I'm harping on that so hard tonight.
There you go.
When was the last time you read the Wyoming Constitution?
Oh, he already
Yeah.
answered that. 2009.
Sorry.
Good try, though.
I know. I tried. I was trying so hard to ask the question.
Brandon, I was just gonna ask you, what do you think are the, 3 biggest challenges that face Sheridan County from a sheriff's perspective?
From a sheriff's perspective. I think we have an underlying drug problem in the county. That's the biggest thing. Another big thing is the influx of people, not like-minded people. So trying to get them educated and used to how we do things here in Wyoming without, so don't Californianize Wyoming, right? So why not work hard on that? The third thing, it's a really good question. So the third thing is the extreme opinions. I obviously am right in the middle, and they're not right in the middle, but I'm closer to the middle in my beliefs. And it's really difficult to have a conversation with people on extremes on both sides without hurting someone's feelings or making somebody upset. Sorry.
So I'm just gonna this is a completely hypothetical, question, because this didn't happen here. This did happen somewhere within the United States. It was in California, and I think it was backed by some of the people. But during the height of COVID, and then through the vaccination movement of the government, that sort of thing, the sheriff's office of Los Angeles County was going to mentally disabled homes and vaccinating mentally disabled people. They didn't come up with the idea. I don't believe the LA County Sheriff came up with the idea. And if it was LA County Sheriff. But they coordinated through, there's emergencies set forth, and then there's incident command posts. You get what I'm talking about, ICS, right? And then there's programs and ideas. One thing coming to Sheridan County is a new position of a public health coordinator. And if you read the description of the job, there's a lot in there of a lot of being prepared for these kind of events that could come in the future. If you were the sheriff and the next wave of incidents came of public health matter, would you ever use your deputies to help immunize people within the community?
No, that's outside our jurisdiction. We won't do that. Absolutely.
If the team, if the county leaders, the health director, everybody is pushing Brandon saying, we need you to help us do this. You're part of this. You need to help us. We need to get this done. This is very important.
If that's the scenario, I'm gonna throw this back at you. That means that people of like mind elected those people into that position, which means the citizens of the county believe in that. We don't here, but in that scenario, that's what would happen.
That's bull. That is such bull. The health person is not an elected official.
Right.
And I'm sorry, when you've got money attached to COVID, or next it'll be monkeypox, or God knows we'll have anthrax rolling through here,
Right.
it's bull. I wanna know, it's my right not to put anything in this body that I don't want.
Yep.
So if now it's Ben Widener,
Right.
if he says, Sharon, you gotta get vaccinated, and I give him hello,
Right.
and he says, you're getting it anyway,
Right.
I don't care if I'm in the city limits, I don't care where I'm at.
Right.
If I'm in Sheridan County, I'm calling you, and they better not touch me.
Right.
Cause it's your job
So
to
we're-
protect my
We're
constitutional
like
right.
minded here, I absolutely.
But for you to
100%.
say, well, like-minded people.
No, what I'm saying,
Bull.
man, okay, so what I'm saying is, in that instance, everybody in the county, in our county, would have voted for that.
We didn't vote for Wagner, he's
I know.
appointed.
What I'm saying is, in this setup scenario, that's the only way that those individuals throughout the county would have voted like that. That's not going to happen. We all have the same values, we all have the same beliefs.
That's why I
Very strong
moved to
beliefs.
Wyoming from Colorado.
Right.
I lived in a frickin' sanctuary. I'm sick of that. I have rights, that's why I came to Wyoming,
have
because I thought you all had that here. And what I've seen in my brief time here, I moved here in 19, you're turning into Denver, just on a smaller scale. I hate to say it, but it's happening. And people, things happen that you don't even know happen. And the next thing you know, oh yeah, oh that was shoved in with this, that was shoved in with that. Oh Sharon, you gotta take this class now, and if the feds ask you something, don't open your mouth because you'll be fired, go to jail, and fined. That's not what I thought Wyoming stood for. I thought you come up here, you had your rights, you could own your guns, you could pretty much do what you wanted on your property. It's not your neighbor's business as long as you're not burning everything down. But that's not what happens here. And for my opinion, you need to sway me if you want my vote, because I don't mean to sound mean or whatever,
I got you.
but I don't think you have a big enough backbone to support what I support.
Well,
I mean, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
but that's
all
my
right.
opinion.
So I totally understand where you're coming from.
And I'm very frustrated right now, and I
I can-
apologize to
I can
everybody,
understand.
but
I
it's
see
just,
that.
it's disheartening to
Yep.
see our country, a state that you thought you loved, is just getting run into the dirt because all these people, inclusive this, inclusive that, well, you can do what you want, but don't make me have to do what you want. I wanna do what I want. And I just think it's bull.
Okay.
I might have to step
There's a
outside,
lot.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Nancy.
Brandon, I'm curious, you talked about if we had a situation where they were going to send some feds our direction, that you would hold the borders as best as you could. How would you go about trying to hold state and or county borders?
So that is, I could only have jurisdiction in the state. I would have to speak with my deputies, and whoever was willing to stand on the county line with me would come with me. I'm not gonna hold somebody else, I'm not gonna order somebody else to put their life on the line, so to speak, for something they don't believe in. But I'm gonna put my life on the line for something that I believe in.
And to compound, I guess, to be in law enforcement, I'm assuming there's probably no requirements to know and understand the United States, let alone the state constitution. Is that a true statement on my part?
There is so that's not entirely true. So we operate day to day through the Constitution, at least the United States Constitution. So we protect the Fourth Amendment rights. We can't do unlawful searches and seizures, right? People are secure in their houses and their property. First Amendment right, I can't stop somebody from saying something that somebody else doesn't like to hear or that I don't like to hear. Eighth Amendment, I have to protect somebody who's in my jail and protect them from unusual, inhumane or uncruel and inhumane treatment, right? I have to give them due process when we do make arrests with the 14th Amendment, make sure that they have they have the right to a quick and speedy trial. So we operate with specific constitutional laws that are in our wheelhouse. Yes, ma'am.
Is there an oath that you all take before entering into your position of law enforcement? And if so, could you explain a little bit about what's in that oath that you take?
Okay, so we raise our hand and we swear an oath to uphold and protect the Constitution of the United States as well as the Wyoming State Constitution.
So along those lines, I mean, if we're going to her scenario, wouldn't you expect your deputies to hold to that oath? And if you are needing to protect everyone from this unconstitutional thing happening, wouldn't you expect your deputies to uphold the oath that they took?
I absolutely do. But the understanding of what is constitutional is super subjective, right? If we look at just one moment, if we look at the United States, there are people on both sides that don't agree what Constitution actually means, right? There's the letter of it, and then there's the implication of it, or the implied intent of it.
So how does that apply to your deputies if, in the case of federals coming and we needed to secure borders, wouldn't you be able to ask any of your deputies to set up a border patrol type thing? And yet you indicated only if they were willing.
So what I said was, I'm not going to order deputies that don't believe in it, and believe in a cause, to stand and lose their lives, because they're not going to anyways, even if I do.
Why would you employ them?
What's that?
Why would you employ them?
I'm not saying that our deputies are like that. That's not who we have on the force right now.
Right, but if you said we got this constitutional issue, we need to protect our borders, and they say, you know what, I'm not gonna do it, I don't believe in that. So they don't believe in the Constitution, and I'm a little confused because the Constitution is written, it's like a contract. You read a contract, the words are literal. I worked in contracts, and I was always accused by contractors who take us to court, Sharon, you're interpreting that literally, just like it was written. Well, duh, I can read. It's not to be implied. It's, oh, this word could mean this word can mean that. This is what it says, this is what it says. So are you telling me that when you read the Constitution, you think back and you go, well, maybe, but I think what they meant was this. Because then you're interpreting it. You're not enforcing what is written. So what are you gonna do? Are you gonna enforce it as written, or are you gonna go, well, I don't think that's really what they meant?
That is a really good question. I'm going to try and do the best that I can, make the best decision that I can, that I think is right for the citizens. That's what I'm gonna try and do. If the citizens that elect me believe one way, I know that they elected me for a reason, so I'm gonna uphold their values and their virtues. If you don't elect me, that's how it is. But the folks that elect me,
so what you're telling me then is if I didn't vote for you, you might as well throw me in the basket of, oh well, I'm a deplorable or whatever.
No.
So you're not going to worry about what Sharon likes. You're going to worry about what the other 51% said. The 49%, we don't care.
That is what it sounds like I said, but that's not what I meant.
Okay.
What I meant was, I'm going to take into account everybody. I care about everybody in the county. Whatever you believe, I care about everybody in the county. I want to do what's best for the citizens of the county. And in these hard circumstances, in these hard times, the elected person is entrusted to make the best decision that they can at the time. And whether the majority or the minority agree with that, it's a hard decision, so you have to deal with it. And if you don't like it, you have civil remedies.
I know, we can go the long way around the barn.
Right.
We can vote you out in the next go around, but in the meantime, rights are trampled on, and once your liberties are taken away, they're very hard to get back.
So like Sharon has brought up, we have a lot of people moving into our community.
Correct.
So there's gonna be a lot of calls this summer and winter for
Right.
search and rescue.
Right.
How is your relationship with search and rescue? Cause I've been on search and rescue before, on and off.
Right.
How is that relationship? Cause I think that's vital to the protection of, honestly, kinda like the idiots that just come here and end up spending the night on the mountain. But we've had sheriffs before where that relationship wasn't great, and we're all volunteer. It's our $150 fill up at the gas station, you know? I mean, it's 100% volunteer.
I have
And the sheriff's office kinda has control over search and rescue, you're our backup.
Right. I have a pretty intimate relationship with search and rescue currently, and search and rescue is near and dear to my heart. They helped search for my grandfather when he was missing when I was in middle school, and same for my grandmother when she was missing when I was in middle school. So we have a phenomenal relationship, and I will help them as much as I possibly can. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You mentioned the drug problem
Yes, ma'am.
a while ago.
Yes.
We'll come back to it. I'm not sure I'm gonna phrase it as a question. I don't know how I'm gonna ask it. So I work in child abuse and neglect in the county and in Johnson County. And in the 14 years that I've been doing this, 3 of my cases have not involved drugs or alcohol. What do you see, if there's anything that you see that the sheriff's office can try to do for that problem, for that issue in our county?
Okay, so let me make sure that I understand that correctly. 3 of your last cases did
No,
not.
3 of
involve-
my cases in the entire 14 years have not had drugs.
Have not.
So,
Okay.
so like 99.9%.
Yep.
It's either alcohol or drugs. And so I wondered if there was anything you thought of or saw the sheriff's office being able to do in a preventative sort of way?
Right. So we try and, initially what I would say was we would try and include that into our public education outreach programs and try and educate and build up those people, give them the tools or assets and tools to effectively and properly conduct themselves. Try and help educate as best as we can.
Do you think that if the community was more educated, your deputies would have more time to investigate into concerns of drugs in the community? Like when you call in your neighbor or something, but you're too busy on like a fence line dispute, you just don't have time.
It does,
And man
that
hours.
does take time, and that would drastically help get our deputies out and back in the community. So yeah, that would help.
And you work with DCI, right?
We do.
Is there one thing that you would like the populace in the county to know or be aware of from the sheriff's department that you think maybe not everybody knows?
Well,
And you can pick 2 if you.
no. So, I mean, the biggest thing tonight is there is a difference between criminal law and civil law, and the sheriff's office, we're our responsibility in that. So that's probably one of the biggest things. There are avenues that we can take, and they're civil and they're law to push back on mandates and such. So that's probably the biggest thing, is the difference between criminal law and civil law. Sir?
So I've got a couple questions. I want to go back to something that Brandy was asking, about the oath.
Sir?
I want to know what it means to you.
Okay.
I also want to ask sort of an elephant in the room question. You work for, Levi's the undersheriff.
Yep.
Right? So you work for Levi.
Correct.
How do you think that looks when you're running for sheriff against him, against your immediate supervisor? And then, the other question I have is, what are your thoughts on a reserve program?
Okay.
For the public?
Right. Can I address the reserve program?
Sure,
first?
absolutely.
So we have to be careful with the reserve program, because the law, if you're not certified by the state of Wyoming, that extends a lot of liability to the sheriff. I would love to have a civil reserve program, some volunteers to help us with large events, mostly with traffic control or in the event of an emergency, helping us go door to door to alert people that we need to get them out. And have those programs in each each town, each municipality.
Disaster service workers.
Excuse me?
Disaster service workers, DSWs?
A lot like that, yes. How do I think it makes the sheriff's office look if I'm running with Levi? There isn't any dysfunction in the sheriff's office. We just simply have different views on how to conduct law enforcement in the county.
Could you give an example?
I can't speak for Levi, and so, but what I can tell, I can tell you that I do believe in less governmental intrusion in your lives. I don't want the sheriff's office unnecessarily in your life.
What's your favorite part of your job?
Excuse me, I'm sorry. There is that other part is, what does the oath mean to you?
The oath, yes, sir. So the oath is very important to me, and I take it very seriously. I conduct my day-to-day business to not violate the Constitution, not violate anybody's rights while I'm doing my job. The upholding it is very subjective. I believe that upholding it in doing my job is not violating it and silencing you when you're speaking out, arresting you when I don't have probable cause to arrest you. I think my job is to make sure that stuff doesn't happen, that you're able to walk around when you're able to walk around, you're able to speak when you're able to speak, to convene in a church. Just allowing those freedoms.
On the disaster relief, what would be like the, I don't know, age limit, I suppose, to be able to take like a class
So
to
it'd be,
help out for that?
I appreciate that question. So it'd be case by case, and maturity would play a lot of fact into it. So 18 is probably going to be a hard line, but if you're younger and you're mature and capable, we can probably make an exception. So 15 is probably the lowest.
I just barely squeaked by.
Brandon, what's your favorite part of your job? Like, you get up, you've been doing this a while. What do you like?
So
What's your favorite part?
when I actually see a positive impact when I meet with somebody, I have transients coming through. I've paid for their hotels myself out of my pocket. Just sitting down with a juvenile, anybody who's under the age of 18, and if they have questions or it looks like they're having a hard time or on the wrong path, having a conversation with them, trying to move them back up to the correct path, and then a couple weeks later, even a month later, or maybe years later, see them as a productive member of society. Those are huge successes in my book.
So who would you want to work with if you made sheriff? What corner would you like to be, cause who would be more like-minded like you to work with? Cause since he's the only one who could say, I gotta arrest you for whatever.
I don't know who's like-minded like me out there, but I have worked with Dr. Bennett in the past, and every time that I go to one of his autopsies, I learn something. So I just because of working with him in the past and learning from him, I would suggest that's what I like to work with. Nothing against anybody else. I just
No, it's just,
I wish these folks had not just left, because I wanted to actually do a clarification. I just checked. And the statement that was made that the sheriff in LA County was going into people's homes and jabbing mentally ill individuals, that actually was not the case, just for clarification. The sheriff was part of vaccination clinics, but there was no going into people's homes or anything like that.
What is the purpose, of the Second Amendment? Why is it there?
I think it's to give citizens the power to fight back against tyranny, to retain their freedoms. Yeah, sir.
Well, that kind of takes me to where I've been this whole time, because nobody wants to see a situation where something has to become uncivil. But first off, I'll ask you, because I've heard you say numerous times that a elected official has to do their best to represent what they think their constituents elected them for. However, if we came to a case, I think, well, I would ask you, do you think that Liz Cheney done her best at representing the Wyoming people? I think she stabbed them in the back. And so my question comes down to, if the legislature in Cheyenne deems it that, we'll say that Biden passes some kind of, shoots out an executive order that takes away our constitutional rights, and our legislature sides with that, you're at a direct point where they violate that. To follow what they're telling you, you're gonna violate our constitutional rights.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry for cutting out. Do you have more?
So, well, I mean, so ultimately, you're faced with a situation that if you enforce what you're being told from the federal government and the Wyoming State Legislature, does there come a point where you stand with the people and you say,
Yes, okay, yeah. So I think I'm gonna beat the dead horse and repeat a lot of what I've been saying tonight. The Constitution does give us civil remedies to address all of that, right? So as soon as, when it comes to a point of, all of you guys are asking me is when am I gonna use force, right? Is that?
When are you gonna stand up to?
when are you gonna make a stand and say, this is unconstitutional, you're not gonna come into my county?
So the Constitution gives
and
us
take away these people's
avenues
rights
to correct all that. And so we have to follow the Constitution to do that. Otherwise, we're violating it ourselves, right?
Okay,
It gives us those avenues.
at some point, whether any of us in this room like it or not, there's a point where it's like saying that when England came to take us under control, remove our guns, that's not something that you can take the long way around the block to solve it. You have to make a stand.
Right, so there's, in my opinion, there are different remedies for different things. So the mandates, I think we need to take some civil action and re-elect or unelect or impeach certain people in the state and replace them with people that are going to enforce our opinions, do what's right for us. When it comes to the Second Amendment, if somebody's gonna come here and try and take our guns, then yes, we stand up and say, no, we're not going to hand over our guns. They're two different things. You're talking about apples and oranges.
So essentially, that's exactly my point.
Okay.
When that happens, then you make a stand with us, it becomes uncivil because we have to protect our rights. And that is what I'm wanting to hear from you, is that they make that law, we're gonna come in, we're gonna take your guns, we're gonna violate your constitutional rights. I want you standing beside me, I don't wanna be fighting you with them.
You're not going to, I understand that. So when it comes to the Second Amendment, you won't be fighting me. I'll be right there with you.
What about the other amendments?
So that, okay, so.
Because,
right.
because my point is it's, the gun thing is, kind of a tangible,
Right,
somebody can put their
Right.
hands on,
Right.
I physically own it.
but there's
But
a little
there are
different-
lots of things that are constitutionally protected
Correct,
that are not a physical thing that we hold.
right.
And when it's that, I feel like as you've explained things tonight, the things that are physical and tangible, there's a hard line to hold, and the rest of it kind of has to get handled in the civil process. I think the concern is because of the years that we've just lived through,
Right.
what is there something, or is there not something that you can do for something outside of a Second Amendment violation?
So it varies. It varies from case to case. So when it comes to mandates for like wearing a mask in Walmart, we're not gonna deal with that. What if it comes down to a mandate to shut down the church? I'll stand here and say, no, we're not gonna shut down the church, people can congregate. If it comes down to people are, freedom of press, so that's a big one in my book. Our opinions on the right side have been oppressed by media, not by the government. If the government was out there saying, okay, we're not gonna run that, then I'd be standing up saying, no, that's wrong. Let the right side opinion get out, let the truth be told. So there's different levels and different violations in my opinion, and it doesn't just fall on, it's not one or the other. There's totality of circumstances, there's different violations. I think with the mandates, it's a lot better avenue to take the long civil way around. If it comes to the Second Amendment, I think it's a better avenue to stand resolute forcefully. Sorry.
The terrible situation that happened at Uvalde, Texas, and other schools throughout the years, but particularly with Uvalde, law enforcement stayed outside. And this is gonna go a little bit along the lines of how is the sheriff's department gonna deal with the borders, okay?
Okay.
I'm gonna make it about the schools. In Uvalde, you had parents that came armed, ready to go in to protect their children as well as other children because law enforcement chose to stay outside. They were held back. There were parents that were tased, there were parents that were detained. Let's say that were to happen here, and it did happen here, just not in those exact circumstances. How would you handle it?
So it's very convoluted, right? We haven't had a whole lot of recent training on that, and we're actually remedying that currently. So with training, our deputies, we're gonna have clear-cut guidelines on how to respond. I would support our training. We're going to enter the building. We're going to go identify the threat and eliminate it if necessary. If the threat takes itself away, we'll still go in and get a bad guy, right?
So it's a violation of a non-sworn individual to be within 1,000 yards of a school with a gun.
Right.
So would you want the support of parents to break that law, to work side by side with you
Okay, so
with a situation like that?
I'm not going to begrudge another parent who wants to go and protect their child, but they might be more of a hindrance and might be more of a liability themselves, no matter what experience they may or may not have. So that is a really good question. I think there needs to be a lot more public education and collaboration between the sheriff's office, the police department, and all of the citizens in our county to help remedy that.
Because you're trained to stay cool, calm, and collected, right?
That's correct.
I go in, I think my kid's in trouble, even no matter how sufficient I am in firearms or not.
Right.
My panic level's through the roof.
You might
So
miss-
that could make an accident happen versus
you're more of a liability,
Trained.
could be more of a liability than an asset. So, working with the community and maybe potentially getting some training out there might be an asset, but right now any community involvement is going to be a liability.
Do you think you're currently staffed enough, or would you want to increase your deputies in your facility?
We've had the same amount of deputies for the last 25 years or so, so I think it's time that we increase our staffing.
Do you know what the number is per capita, sheriff deputy to the population of the county of?
Currently?
Huh?
I don't know right now. I don't.
Then
Well,
I was gonna do a
there's-
follow-up question with that, is if you didn't know what that was, is that enough? But
Right.
it's kinda hard to.
Well, so there's 20 deputies and there's roughly 30,000 individuals, so there's one per 10,000 citizens.
1 per 15,000.
15,000. One per 10.
That's
So,
not fair.
That's how much our community
So
has
it's
grown
a
in
wide area.
25 years.
It's a big county.
No way, yeah.
So what would you do then, if that's being not the case, what would you do to increase deputy size, and then where would you get the funds to do it?
we'd speak with the commission, try and get to, I think increasing by at least 2 is paramount right now. Try and get the funding through the county. And that's, it's kind of the best way to do it right now.
So basically, for you to get anything like more staff, more funds, it all comes through the county commission.
Correct.
Any other final questions before
Hey,
we wrap
Brandon.
it up for snacks? And visiting.
A question that was asked last time that I think is good for us to know from any of you, and in a statement. My question is, what do you foresee your first 100 days or so looking like if you were to get elected? And my comment and suggestion to you is, having just gone through our Constitution class and having my eyes opened much more wider, I honestly never cared who the coroner was. It was a name on the ballot and check, or leave it blank and move on down the road. Now that I fully understand that that person is totally within their rights and laws to lock you up behind your jail bars,
There's only one with the
you
authority.
might want to go ahead and find out what they're thinking, the ones that are running.
Right,
So,
appreciate that.
first 100 days.
First 100 days.
Or so.
I think there's gonna be a lot of education, hopefully job shadowing Alan, figure out what he's doing day to day, what meetings he's going to, and then, that's probably gonna take we'll say 90 of that, and then the last 10 I'll be on my own. In that same vein, I still have some ideas I'd like to streamline at the office. I'll probably administer that as fast as possible, just to get it going. And just so implementing my plan or just the little critiques that I would do with the sheriff's office, and then learning the rest of it, the administrative meeting part of it with Alan.
What are those critiques that you're interested in?
Just little things to help our deputies be more efficient and get out on the road and be in contact with our citizens. So, I guess not just little things, but we changed a couple of report writing things, policies. Probably change some directives on patrols. Try and start instituting some education programs, and potentially look at the schedule a little bit.
How much time will you be on the street?
That's a really good question. I plan on wearing a uniform and being a working sheriff if elected. So, depends on what administrative meetings that I need to attend.
Sure.
But I do plan on being out and in the community.
You mentioned, going through the county commissioner for a lot of the funding stuff for deputies. Are you familiar with any of the candidates running for county commissioner right now? And if so, who are you, kinda hoping for to help you further that along? 'Cause I personally, seeing the growth around here, it seems like having a few more deputies might not hurt.
Yeah, right. So obviously the sheriff, the current sheriff is running for commission. He would be obviously an asset or a friend for law enforcement to help us. There are 7 other candidates for county commission. And and there's 3 spots open. I'd probably reelect,
I have a
Jennings.
list.
You re-elect Jennings?
She's not on.
Oh,
She's not a,
Nick,
Siddle, I'd reelect Nick.
Jason,
Chefs.
thank you. Christy Haswell, Michael Arzi, Brian Helfrich, Dennis Fox, Holly Jennings.
I'd probably reelect James too.
Okay, everybody, we're gonna stop there on this formal part and let him get down and get out of the heat. And everybody can just feel free to stay, mingle, relax. If there's something you wanted to ask again or talk to him about that you didn't really wanna announce it in front of everybody, or if you wanna just dialogue through some of those things more, one-on-one, now is your time. Like I said, there's snacks. There's cookies, there's coffee, I made it better this time. Iced tea, lemonade, because it's hot, so please feel free to stay and get to know him more and get what you need so that you can vote accordingly. Thank you, Brandon, for coming.